Hello and welcome to another episode of Senior Spot. Today I'm delighted to have as a guest Sarah Kinghorn, who is the owner of Footcare Focus, and she will be able to tell us all different ways that we can be preventative and proactive of taking care of our feet, and then what to do when we have some challenges and things that are troubling us. So welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for having me.
Excellent.
Nice to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And you know, feet, everybody has them typically, and so it's a really important thing to take care of. It gets us from point A to point B, so I'm really thrilled to be able to hear all the different things that Footcare Focus does. So I'm going to let you start off by telling us what is it, what is it that you do, and where are you, and how do you get access to you?
Well, Footcare Focus is a group of nurses, and we specialize in preventative foot care services for the senior population, mostly. We can do home visits, and we go to different communities, and we organize clinics with the senior centers. We're out there. We travel all over the place, and whatever environment, we can make people sit in a proper way to do their feet. So,
Well, and that's very helpful because sometimes people can't leave their homes to go and have the proper treatment and things like that. So you're all nurses. I'd love to go back to your background. So all of you are nurses.
We are all nurses. We've had various experience. A lot of us have been in acute care settings, and right now I'm in the community. And I started off getting involved in a public health initiative, which was for veterans a few years ago, and I've been doing it every year. It's called the Boston Stand Down, and it's coming up on Friday, actually, and it's going to be in Government Center this year. We reach out and we help vets, and it's a free service. We volunteer our time, and we have a foot care tent. So there's, all of the foot care nurses kind of get together once a year to help this initiative, and I bring a lot of the nurses that work with me.
So I'm assuming that there's training beyond just going and having your BSN, your registered nurse license. So there's obviously specific training that's involved in being able to do this type of service.
Yeah, so we go on and we do some specialized courses. A lot of us do courses and do some mentoring and practice, and then there's an exam you can take. So I have taken the exam. It's a 3-hour exam, and it's quite a thing to study for.
Oh, that sounds very intensive.
Yeah,
yeah, that is.
There's a lot that goes on with your lower leg. So the nurses, when we go do a normal, typical visit, we're doing an assessment first. So we're looking at the lower leg, checking color, temperature, and checking for anything, listening to the person. We want to make sure that we're seeing if they have any problems going on at the moment.
Sure, and I'm sure you probably pick up things that they didn't even know or imagine that would have ever been, a concern or an issue too. Because you mentioned in the beginning that, it's preventative, it's proactive, but I imagine that you're reactive too, and that people have issues and having you come in and helping them with solutions on how to make things better as well.
Yeah. So, we talk to them, and normal visit, half an hour to an hour.
Okay.
And we'll, like I said, we assess the pulses and we check for sensation. We're cutting the toenails. We'll decrease. Sometimes toenails get kind of thick, so we reduce them a little bit and reduce any callus areas. And at the end, we give a really nice massage.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm going to sign up for that. And who would ever say no to that? That sounds great.
Yeah. As part of ongoing education and training, we've gotten involved in a little bit of reflexology. So we've done a little course in that, and we learned some key pressure points that can help people. And when we're doing massage, we're feeling different parts of the foot that maybe have crunchy parts, and you can kind of work on those areas with a nice, I like to use more natural lotions like shea butter or, olive oil or sesame oil, things like that.
So, different conditions, different, typical reasons why someone, might have, a medical condition that would require calling you and having you go out to provide the service. Can you give some examples of, different cases and different reasons why, people call you besides, the obvious of going and trimming someone's toenails, which for a lot of people, as they get older, it becomes a more difficult task to do on their own, for a variety of medically related reasons. So, what are some of the reasons why people, would have you come into their home or go to the COA to have the clinic done?
So I think a lot of people come to see us more so they're having trouble reaching their feet, or they're concerned because they have diabetes, or they're on blood thinners. They're afraid sometimes to cause, a cut or a problem. A lot of times they don't have the right equipment. So we have all the right equipment.
Well, I think too, the right equipment is huge, and I know that we're going to do a show and tell in a little bit, which I'm excited about. We won't subject the audience to actually doing it on my foot. We plan to do it on my hand, but it's really interesting because a lot of times people don't have the proper equipment, for sure. And it's interesting when you mention they're on blood thinners. Maybe you can explain a little bit more to the audience that might not know, if you're on a blood thinner and you do, mistakenly cut yourself, your skin, what's the danger in it? I think the audience would probably need to know that.
Yeah, so just being aware when you cut yourself, you're going to bleed more if you're on a blood thinner, and it may take a long time to clot. Also, with diabetes, when you maybe make a small cut, you're more apt to get an infection.
Sure.
So you want to make sure, the feet are clean. If you do cut yourself, make sure you wash it really well. And a lot of times, another issue, people have arthritis in their hands and they can't use nail clippers.
That's a really good point. Like you mentioned, just reaching might physically be difficult, but a lot of times it could have to do with just the dexterity and the strength of someone's hand being able to do it. Or sometimes people, if they're in motion, if they have tremors and things like that, they're not able to.
Vision as well.
Oh,
so
I didn't even think of that one. Absolutely, vision.
They can't see a lot of times. If they have diabetes as well, they can't see as well.
Well, and I'm sure you're going to show us on the show and tell that even just sensation, and you might not feel something happening, and that's a concern because it's an area that maybe needs to be attended to by a professional like yourself. So those are some different reasons and things. Can you share any success stories? Anything that you've gone in and you've said, wow, that really made a difference in someone's life?
There are a lot of success stories.
I'm sure you have lots.
I just see faces because everyone, I really connect with all the clients. So one success story, let's see. A man who, has diabetes, has neuropathy, which means that they can't feel anything happening in their feet. They have no sensation whatsoever. And they get a buildup of calluses on the bottom of the feet. And, he really likes to walk. He wants to walk. So I do his feet every other month just to keep maintenance and trim everything down. But also, I've referred him on to a podorthist.
Okay, so that's different from a podiatrist.
Yeah.
Okay, so explain what that is. I've never even heard of that.
So a podorthist is someone who's going to look at your feet and try to make the shoe more comfortable for that person. So it can be, custom molds and just offloading is what it's called. So you take the pressure off in different areas. And he's had a great success with that. I'm so happy for him because he was very uncomfortable. And I find a lot of people that are uncomfortable. And sometimes when people are not comfortable, they stop moving.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And, I'll go in and I'll say, hey, wow, your feet look much better. What's happening? And they say they're not walking anymore, and that's not what I want to hear.
Right. It's interesting. It's like a vicious cycle, where your job is to be able to come in and break that cycle, and that's great to hear that you're able to refer them to other folks that are kind of part of the solution, part of the whole picture and the equation, in order to get them to keep moving and not be sedentary, which is, of course, we know. Obviously a negative thing to be sitting around. Nice that the feet look great, but it doesn't help the rest of, doesn't help the rest of your body.
So I want people to keep moving. I encourage them to do foot exercises.
And why? I think I know why, but why is that important for someone to keep doing foot exercises?
Well, we have 26 bones in our feet and 33 joints. And, everyone complains about arthritis in all different parts of their body. but your feet have so many joints. If you stop moving them, they just get stiff.
And I don't hear too many people complaining about arthritis in their feet. It's mostly hands, it's mostly, you know, other joints like you said, but that's interesting. I wouldn't think of it being associated with your feet.
Yeah, well, when you put your feet into your shoes, your feet don't really move. But I can tell when I'm seeing someone, if their feet are very stiff, they're not, you know, wiggling them, bending them, and, you know, moving them all around. So there are some simple exercises that I, you know, suggest, and you kind of act like a ballet dancer sometimes, or
yeah, well, you can make it sound like an elegant routine, so it doesn't sound so cumbersome when you say exercise.
Oh, well, right? Yeah, no, it's just getting up in the morning and, you know, wiggling your toes. So yeah, and I mean, there's over 100 muscles and tendons and ligaments, and I feel like there's so much, and there's not a whole lot of focus on feet.
No, and that's why I love the name of your company, which is Footcare Focus, and that's, I mean, you know, the human body, obviously there's so many different moving parts of your human body, and sometimes you don't give those certain areas the attention they deserve. And so it is interesting, before knowing you and having met you through our professional connections, I never would have thought that that would be a separate service and, you know, and specialty area. And, you know, the more I work with the population, or just anybody of any age, I mean, your feet take you from here to there, and you have to take care of your feet. You know, people will say, oh, you need a good mattress so you can get some good sleep. Well, you know what? You need good shoes, which we were talking about your shoes when just a little bit earlier. And, you know, you said you pick, obviously, you're conscious of picking, you know, good shoes. So what are some suggestions you might have for folks out there besides going to a specialist that the gentleman in your success story needed to see someone who was a real specialist? What about for the average person? You know, what would you recommend as far as footwear?
Yeah, well, I'll take myself as an example. I mean, after, you know, if you have any weight gain or pregnancies, it affects your feet and how you put pressure on different areas. So you need to get resized. You need to check the sizes. I never knew I had really wide feet, you know. All of a sudden they just start spreading, and they're a size bigger now, you know, and that's only in the past decade. So as you go through life, they do change, and I encourage, you know, the senior population to try and get remeasured and make sure things fit appropriately. I know they like their certain things.
Oh yeah, you have that favorite pair of shoes that no matter what you do, you're going to get your feet into those favorite shoes, and it's probably could be quite negative, you know, in terms of the impact that it would take.
I really focus on the footwear though, because if you're having problems, you might not have enough space in your shoes, and there might be some friction and rubbing, which causes calluses to build up. So it's not going to be comfortable, and you're not going to walk. And it's so important for your balance and not falling.
I didn't, you know, and that is so true. I mean, that's a key piece. I mean, the two major reasons why people usually end up in an emergency situation is from falls or not adhering to their medications. So obviously footwear and having proper fitting and the right shoes. And you know, here's the thing. You used to think that, you know, shoes that were properly fitted were, you know, were kind of clunky and didn't look nice. Well, I mean, I've seen the shoes you wear, and that doesn't have to be like that. I think people associate that there isn't going to be any style. You know, it's going to be comfortable, but it's not going to be fashionable. There's a lot of great things out on the market.
There are, and there's a couple different places I could share with people that, you know, they'll take the time with you. They're not going to rush and just make sure you get whatever shoes.
Well, that would be great, because the audience being local, I'd love to be able to have you share, you know, some of those places.
Yeah. So I suggest Alex's and Nashua.
Oh, absolutely. With or without, I mean, my kids, I took them all through until they could really pick their own shoes and go their own way. But, you know,
Such a great selection, and all different sizes. They even have something that if you have any bunions or issues like that, you can get it punched out a little bit. You've got to inquire about that, though, when you're there.
That's good to know. I mean, they're such professionals there, and they really take interest in what you're using the shoe for, and you know, any issues that you might have. And I would never know that they could just punch out another, you know, section of the shoe to make it more comfortable. Most people think they just have to suffer.
Yeah, no, definitely don't have to suffer. There's a lot going on, and you know, I know people go online and maybe order shoes because they can't get out, or maybe their kids try to help them, but you really, really need to get fitted. And once you find something you like, maybe they can help you get them a little more easier, or you can get them online. But it's really important to have a look at the feet and someone, who works in that field to kind of measure you properly.
So, I mean, it's interesting. This is many preventative steps. I mean, that you're actually taking in giving the focus to your foot, your foot care, because it's avoiding falls. It's going to help the person to stay more active. I mean, it's so much more than trimming someone's nails. So, what I would love to do is have you kind of walk me through what a typical appointment would be like. And, you mentioned before unless it's an ongoing client, you're showing up for the first time and you're really doing an assessment initially.
Correct.
So can you walk us through what that would feel like? Because usually when somebody does something where they really don't know, what.
Yeah. Do you want to do it to you as
Oh,
we
sure,
go?
absolutely. Show and tell is great. You bet.
So, initially, I get referrals from different people, or they call me. Their children might call me, so they want them to have care at home. If I go do a home visit, I call the night before and make sure everything's okay. And when I go in, introduce myself, and usually if they're in a recliner or somewhere where their feet up, but they can be in bed too, it's okay. Just it makes it a little easier on my back and my posture. And
you have to take care of the whole body, not just the feet, everything.
Be aware. And so they put their feet up, and first I do a nice assessment. I'm looking at their lower legs, checking in between the toes. And
what are you looking for in their lower legs? Like, what is it that you're looking for symptoms and signs of things?
Any edema, usually swelling. A lot of people have swelling, and that can be related to circulatory issues. So, your whole body is going to be focused, and sometimes it affects your feet as well. It can be very uncomfortable. And they might not like the stockings, but sometimes you've got to wear the compressions.
Right. So you're making the recommendations of what goes along with the
suggestions,
footwear as well.
Yes, and I know, they might not always like what I have to hear, but I try. I'm checking color, sensation. I'm going to show you how I check their pulses with this Doppler here.
So a Doppler.
So I'm showing it on your wrist and your radial artery, but I normally do it on the foot in two different places. So I don't know if you can hear that there.
I can. I'm alive. I can hear it.
So, that's your heart rate and your pulse. And normally I check their heartbeat and their feet. I say, make sure that they're getting their circulation down to the feet.
Do you compare it to another part of the body, or is it just what would typically be normal of the foot?
Well, your heart rate and any pulse point is going to, tell me how fast it's going, how regular. So I can sense a lot of things from a heart rate.
Okay.
And then let's see. So I check your pulse, and then, so this is.
See, I'm thinking, you go in, you trim toenails, you have toenail clippers, and that's it, and you're done. But this is amazing.
I think a lot of people think that.
Oh, sure.
They want me to be in and out in 10 minutes, and that's not something the nurses want. We want to do a full, lower leg assessment. It doesn't take that much longer, and we want them to get the full treatment.
Well, and especially the foot rub at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, who wants to miss that?
No, you can't miss that. Although it's okay if they don't want
Well, you know what, and that's true, because some people do not like that.
No, they
so
don't
I'm sure you ask first.
Yeah, I ask, and normally they do enjoy it.
Yeah.
So this is a monofilament. It's a little piece of fishing wire. It's a hard wire, and it doesn't hurt at all. But we check it in different places and ask if they can sense it, if they can feel it. So all over the bottom of the foot.
Okay.
And in some places,
I can. I'm in good shape. My hands are.
I mean, can you feel? It's not that sharp at all.
No, not sharp at all. But you can feel it to give you the feedback. Definitely.
Exactly. So we're making sure that they do have sensation, because with diabetes, you lose in neuropathy. You get neuropathy, and you lose a sensation in your feet. And if you step on something, you might not know it's there.
Sure.
So a lot of times I encourage people to, especially diabetics, wash their feet daily and use a mirror to check their bottoms of their feet.
What are they looking for when they check the bottoms of their feet?
Any, any cuts, wounds, anything that might be starting, because you want to just get it as quickly as you can. You want to prevent.
Sure.
And that's what, our focus is prevention. So we want to take the time and, look at the feet every day. And I do that. I go into different senior centers. I'll do a talk and I have them take their shoes and socks off and look at their feet.
That's great. So, I mean, you're teaching them self-care and being able to monitor and be able to observe things.
You know, and I know they can't maybe reach down and, you know, bend up their legs or.
But that's a great idea. You just
use
put
a
a mirror. Yeah. It's very simple, but you wouldn't necessarily think of it.
Yeah. So inspection, and then what else? You know, the trimmers here. These are called the nippers, and they are quite strong.
They look heavy duty, definitely. I'm not going to ask you to trim anything.
No. But this is, you know, what normal podiatrists use.
Okay.
And they might even have smaller, all different size kind of ones, but this is what you use to trim the nails. And this is a Dremel or a nail file.
Okay.
And, you know, this is used to reduce any calluses or maybe thicker nails.
Sure. Yep.
And it does vibrate a little.
Usually it actually, it sounds very quiet. So it's not overwhelming. Sometimes you hear drills and whatnot, and it seems like it'd be kind of nerve-wracking when you hear the noises sometimes associated with what's actually going on. But all of those items seem very mild, very easy to.
Usually people think it tickles, and I end up making people laugh a little bit. You know, and everyone's sensitive. They can be so sensitive with their feet, right?
Yes, I am very sensitive with my feet. So yeah.
So after I do all that, I give them a really nice wash, and I have these self-sudsing cloths that, if we're in a clinic environment, it's easy to use. At home, you know, I can, you know, do a little bit better, but so I give them a nice wash and then dry them really well. It's very important to dry well, and I focus on that because a lot of people think you step on the towel and then they're dry, but in between the toes gets really moist and damp. And that's when, you know, you get athlete's foot fungus, and it gets in your slippers. A lot of people wear the same slippers over and over.
Right. And that's just a breeding ground for it, I'm sure.
It is. And, you know, simple things like airing out your feet, putting your slippers in the sun, different things like that can really help. Maybe a bit of powder to help keep different athlete's foot and fungus down.
Yeah, I mean, that applies to everybody of every age, no matter what.
Yes. So drying is really well. Another tip was the hair dryer.
Aha.
So if you can't reach to do the toe flossing with the towel, you point the hair dryer down at the toes, and it dries them.
Absolutely. And you know, it's interesting. I actually knew that one because we did have a client that, you know, really was wanting to be as independent as possible, and that was an issue to be able to bend for it. And I remember when we first started with him, you know, we thought that was just such a clever solution to break out the hairdryer and do it. And we thought, this is a great idea. We're taking this on the road with us. So.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. And so a nice massage at the end. I focus on a couple of different points, and, you know, make sure I dry the lotion in between the toes at the end. But a good, you know, 5-10 minute massage on the feet. And people always tell me they sleep really good.
Oh, I bet. It's very relaxing. It's very relaxing. So, you know, I know that you do this obviously privately as your practice, going into people's homes or wherever they, you know, wherever they happen to be, that you can provide the service, and that you go into obviously a lot of the counsel and aging centers, and you're doing education and teaching people how to do the self-care. But, you know, it's interesting, when I've gone in and I've seen the clinics happening and in some of the locations, it really does, usually I'm just seeing and observing just the trimming. You really bring all of these other aspects to it and assessing it, which, you know, day to day, week to week, you know, the conditions can change. So I think it's so well done and so complete. You know, so obviously some of those services are free of charge through the COA, and you're giving your time often to you know, to be able to do these you know, these assistive things in towns and such. How do you manage it? Can insurance cover this? Is this something that's private pay? How do you manage that piece of it for someone that, you know, may not be able to get to the clinic or would really prefer doing it, you know, in their home?
So it is private pay. You know, I'd love it if insurance would start to get more proactive about prevention. But no, we do have a charge, and so the clinics are a little less money because everyone's coming to the center, and home visits are a little more money. But I do take you know, check or cash right now, and yeah.
I know, and your team is great. I mean, I've been really happy and thankful to be able to refer Footcare Focus to, to clients of ours, knowing, and there's nothing better than having someone call and say, I just can't even imagine who in the world would possibly do this, and to be able to say, well, I have a lady. It's not I have a guy, I have a lady, and her whole company, this is their focus. And I love that you have a team of different people, and I'm sure some of you have different specialties in different areas, so you might be able to assign clients to just certain people in your group. And it's who would know that this even existed? I mean, I'm sure for you, I guess we never even started with, how did you come up with this idea to specialize in this?
Right. Well, I think I mentioned, so I was doing the Boston stand-down.
Right. Yeah.
And I got my training from an Army nurse, actually. And in the military, feet are very important because they're your only transportation.
And talk about keeping them dry. My husband went to the Air Force Academy, then was in the Air Force, and just all the different trainings, everything. One of the most important things is to keep your feet dry. I remember him saying that numerous times.
Yes, and I've talked, I have some clients who are veterans, and they remember being in different wars and things, and only having one pair of socks or two pairs of socks.
And how do you make that last, and how do you keep your feet from running into trouble?
So, the Army nurse was training us, and I started to see a real gap in care. I now work in the community, so I just thought, hey, I wanted to bring this to my area and my community, and there's a lot of feet out there.
There are typically two per person, typically, but you're right. I mean, there are not people without them, typically.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a really great fit for nurses because we do take the time and listen to people. We can go out to their homes. We're sensitive to memory issues and mobility issues. We know a lot of other medical things that can happen at the home. And a lot of times, I'll learn something in someone's home and bring it to someone else's because they have this assistive device, that someone else needs. And it's a suggestion. So I feel like I can help other people by learning from other people. And
I think Footcare Focus is absolutely something that our senior community needs and will continue to need. And I also believe that people can be lifelong learners, and the earlier you learn these important things and how to take care of it, the more proactive you're going to be. So I think Footcare Focus has a wonderful future ahead of itself, and I'm very pleased that there are such committed people like yourself and the other nurses that are part of the company to be able to bring this to people in their homes, wherever they can be. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for finding this this niche area, and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Make sure that people give you a call when they're in need of feet care. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.